So you think you have a plan for when it all hits the fan. Well, here's a reality check and a warning for you preppers out there, including you, Nate. Note to self. The government has a plan too, and it's to expropriate all of your stuff, including your human labor and that of your offspring. Yes, it's true. The Emergency War Powers Acts will be enacted in times of crisis that will effectively disarm you of all of your rights and civil liberties when the time comes. So the question is, why prep at all? And is it a prepping paradox that you could have built out an entire off-grid paradise, but because of the digital transaction record in the information age, it's very likely that the government and their various algorithms that they will be utilizing will be able to triangulate your location and realize that you are a person of post-apocalyptic interests and come and confiscate and expropriate all of your stuff, again, including your human labor, conscripting you into World War III. So why prep at all if this is the case? We'll talk about that in just a moment, but I'm going to tell you what inspired this upcoming rant. And it is the Canadian bureaucrats, in their infinite wisdom, in a province called Nova Scotia, 50,000 square kilometers of wilderness wonderland has now been restricted to the public. The only reason for living in Canada is the splendor of the outdoors. 6 to 8 months out of the year, depending on where you live in this country, it is cold as balls and the bugs really suck in those other 4 to 6 months. The only gift we have is the recreational possibilities that our vast boreal forests afford us. And the government has decided, in their infinite inanity in Nova Scotia, that they're going to take this one thing from us until October 15th. And here's the reason that they've provided. You're not going to believe this. They have banned all hiking and recreational activity on Crown land. I know that's a joke in itself, right? For you people who don't live here and you think that we're not under the auspices of the monarchy. Well, we call it Crown land, okay? And it's the land that is public access land, but nobody owns except the Crown, which is allegedly the Canadian government, but we won't go there. So we can no longer access public land for the next few months because of the threat of a possible hypothetical wildfire. Now, nobody is more of a proponent of wildfire awareness and preparedness than myself. I have done more videos on the apocalyptic scale wildfires that have been raging in Canada over the past 10 years. I've done dedicated, actionable content that shows people how to evacuate from these situations, what to do in wildfires, how to prepare your property against wildfires. I've approached it every which way. I've not succumbed to the propaganda that it is all just a climate hoax and blah, blah, blah. There actually is a real credible threat for a myriad reasons why these wildfires are growing in scope and scale. It is real. But this level of egregious government overreach should be a reminder. If they do this, if they're willing to take away your right to travel, to access nature, when times are good, when nothing is happening, imagine what they're going to take from you when something actually happens. This is a throwback to that spectacle that was 2020, wasn't it? And we've not learned our lessons yet. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's going to be some people saying, well, yeah, we don't want our province to burn down. You really got to think about this. There's ways to deal with this situation that are more targeted and focused, as opposed to just broad sweeping bans that are going to have detrimental effects across the board, as they did throughout COVID. Be it in access to recreational and health activities, be it businesses which are going to be negatively impacted, be it the erosion of faith in these government institutions and trust in government institutions, and on and on. But the real danger here is beyond eroding the public trust in government. It's that this is going to set a precedent for when something really does go wrong, the government will so swiftly help themselves to what you have. And this is all codified into law. Every province, every jurisdiction, municipality, if you're in the United States, county, state, and federal government has emergency war powers acts that are written up and that will be put into place when the shit hits the fan. And if what we're seeing right now is any example of the extent that they're willing to go to, how flippantly they can just deprive people of their charter of rights and freedoms on the potential for a pre-crime, possibility of a crime being committed, is a very scary thought and should keep preppers up at night. This is why you're going to have some sort of facsimile, some secret sanctuary, some composite of your preparedness property that is truly off the grid, okay? That is truly off the books, that you've paid for in cash, in which there is no digital record of. Otherwise, they're going to come for it. And honestly, these are notes to self. Your property, your main property, probably should just be a decoy property for the time being, so that they go there. I mean, to outsmart the system this day and age is going to be very, very challenging. The reason why I take issue with the specific law being imposed in Nova Scotia is because they could have made this far more targeted. You don't need to charge people $30,000 fines for going for a hike in the woods. That's all we have in Canada. It's like they have no issue with you stuffing your face with processed food, watching the Netflix, being stuck at home on psychiatric medication. They will do that until, there's nothing left of us. But the issue I have with this is that they could have made specific laws. They could have said, no bringing incendiary devices into the wilderness. No, plastic see-through water bottles that if left on the side of the road could potentially, because of the how the light gets concentrated, like a magnifying glass, you could ban, clear plastic bottles. There's things that you could do that are far more specific, but because the government is just lazy, they've chosen to make this one blanket law, which effectively now cuts off this entire population from 50,000 square kilometers of wilderness for the best part of the year. And it's incredible how many people are just going along with it. It's insane, really, to think that we're still that complacent, that we still haven't learned the lessons of COVID. So this is normalizing this government overreach, unfortunately. And when it all hits the fan, it's going to be much, much worse. They want to control people's movement. They want to control access to various resources. And who knows what other cover for whatever else they're up to right now this actually is, right? Because if they can limit you from regions, and of course, you can get special permits to access these regions, and it's likely going to be from industry. And if anybody is going to start a fire, it's probably going to be industry, driving big trucks, throwing off sparks. If there's a possibility of a wildfire being set, and if there's arsonists, they're going to act anyways. In the same way that gun control doesn't stop gun crime, this sort of wilderness control isn't going to stop arson. So it's all pretty silly, it's greenwashing, and it's likely for the purpose, I think, of getting people to make videos like this so they can gather intelligence on who's going to be a problem when it all goes down. Here's what you can expect when the shit hits the fan in terms of government overreach, okay? You can expect mass surveillance, and this is going to leverage artificial intelligence. All the datas and sensors, the Internet of Things devices, all of that right now, or what they're working on with systems devised by companies like Palantir, are ways to integrate all that data, because it's too much data to have people trying to analyze and interpret. So they need, with AI, it basically allows them to make sense of the data. So they can triangulate and predict with a high degree of certainty on the basis of a psychological profile that they've created for every single person who has access to the internet, leveraging their smartwatches, their smartphones, their smart cars, and everything smart except the person themselves, who are increasingly dumber and more complacent. Well, they're able to effectively determine everything about you, not only what you have, but what you're going to do with what you have. So you can expect this mass surveillance apparatus to really come to fruition in these dark times ahead. And this is why they put all of that stuff in bunkers. I'm talking about the servers, the AI supercomputer farms. These things are dug deep into the earth because that's how important they are. As funny as that Ice Cube War of the Worlds rendition was, if you haven't seen it yet, there's a lot of truth to that, in that they're coming for the data, and the data is strategic. It will be protected. It is regarded now as a piece of critical infrastructure that the government will seek to protect, because it's the only way they're going to be able to get a handle on things when it all hits the fan. And because AI is such a force multiplier, in the past, I've made videos about how it's very unlikely that the government is going to come to your house and commandeer your 3-month food supply. Now I'm not so sure, because of the level of surveillance and the data analytics that are available to them that can quickly point out, so they can systematically know where to go. They'll go for the lowest hanging fruit first, that which will yield the most returns. And this is the prepping paradox, right? Because the more established you are off grid, the more you got the solar and the geothermal and the animals and the this and the that and the that, the bigger the targets you're likely going to have on your back. You're going to be a top priority for expropriation. I mean, first it's going to be big agra, which is what they're going to confiscate. But if we're talking about especially on a municipal level and on a more, county-based level, that's what I would worry about. I would worry about the good old boys trying to come out to your property and tell you what's what. You need to have a contingency plan for that. You're going to see mandatory digital ID. There's no doubt about it. Biometric tracking for resource access and rationing. In fact, I guarantee you that's what they're going to try to roll out in the Gaza Strip. They're going to try to put everybody there into a system, and that is a trial run. Everything that you're seeing there, those dystopian scenes of people, hordes of people running for airdrop supplies, that's all a trial run, as is what's going on in Ukraine, where they're executing these war powers and depriving people of pretty much any civil liberty and any dignity that might remain. You're going to see censorship and information control. You're likely going to see AI-generated propaganda that is specialized to your psychology. So we're not all going to see the same commercials. We're not all going to see the same TV shows. We're not all going to see, the same generic propaganda and just hope that we take to it. No, it's going to be custom made, tailored. It will be bespoke to you, the individual, based on your digital psychological profile, finely tuned to be able to influence you in the most specific and targeted way possible. We will see geofencing and movement restriction via phones and various financial data. Is it going to resemble 15-minute cities? Well, you see, with a lot of these concepts that get hyped up at the start, it always materializes, but never in the way you think. Like, if you were to tell somebody 50 years ago that everything you do will be tracked and that, nothing will be secret, a person would have imagined some real dark 1984 Orwellian system. But what is the system that we have here? It's far more Huxleyan, in the sense that everybody's just carrying around a phone that they think is affording them all of these privileges. But in fact, it's tracking their every single move and developing this psychological profile that I speak of that will, of course, be weaponized when the shit goes down. You can expect internet blackouts because of the smart grid that they're rolling out. and the throttling to suppress any sort of organization or resistance to these things. Different types of jamming will be used to ensure that people can't leverage technology to unite. And they want people to basically stay indoors, don't speak with one another, have no social skills, pretend like you're something you're not with your avatar and your face filters, and just pretend everything is fine to the bitter end. Curfews and lockdowns, we all know about that. That's going to be enacted for sure. Travel bans between provinces, states, or towns. Forced relocation and evacuation from unsafe or strategic areas. They're already priming people for this with the wildfire stuff here in Canada. People get forced out of their homes all the time. Some provinces, it varies. Our province here in Saskatchewan are kind of one of the last holdouts, in addition to Alberta, for the preservation of whatever civil liberties and dignity remains here. But in many places, they're conditioning people to basically, when the government or the fire department or some guy in a high-vis vest says it's time to go, people jump without question. And that's pretty damn depressing for somebody like me to have to watch that. Roadblocks and checkpoints restricting access to rural or prepper zones. I get it. I get that there is a risk of wildfire, that they have to be careful because one spark could potentially send the whole island up in flames. But again, there is much more targeted and I would say efficient ways of doing something like that than the way they're going about it now, when there is no fire burning there. And that is the crazy thing. Like, there's fires raging across Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and they're not enacting these types of policies, especially across the entire province. It should be something specific to the zone in question. Anyways, banning gatherings under emergency assembly rules. Maybe that's what COVID was training us for. The government seizure of private land and buildings for public use. That will be a factor as well. Now, again, they're not going to go for something that is, you have to understand there's going to be a limited amount of resources that they have to throw at something like this. They're going to systematically go to those places of greatest interest, and they're going to work their way down to the guy with the 1 month food supply in his apartment high-rise building in some densely populated urban place. That's not who needs to worry about this. And this is the prepping paradox. Because what this will encourage, and what this should encourage people to do, if you're genuinely preparing for Mad Max, you have to do it in secret. You have to, the property that you're on, hint, hint, has to just be a decoy. And you need to have a backup. You remember that movie with Jodie Foster, Contact, where they knew there was going to be some crazy nut job that went and blew the thing up that was supposed to allow them to travel through a wormhole and go to some alternate galaxy. The aliens sent us a message, but it was really ourselves or whatever. It's like an interstellar, precursor. Well, in that movie, they knew this. They knew that some whack job or some government nut job is going to try to, sabotage the whole thing. So we need a secret backup, a facsimile of our, off-grid paradise somewhere else that was acquired through non-digital means, which are untrackable. Because if you don't have that in that type of situation, there's a good chance the more established you get, the bigger the target is going to be on your back. Now, it depends on the size of your group, because the size of your group could be a problem. We've seen even in modern times, whether it was Waco, Texas, or what was that other ranch? Was it the Bundy? I can't remember what it was. But, if you have a sizable group and if you have sizable support, in even the best of times, that level of resistance can become problematic for government. Well, when the shit really hits the fan, it can become doubly more problematic. And are they going to want to expend the manpower to try to expropriate that? It's perhaps more unlikely if you can muster the type of force that you will need to defend that property. Now, I'm not saying do anything illegal. I'm just saying. Requisition of vehicles, tools, or communication gear. This is not just, random bullet points. This is all the law. In fact, I've done a video on the Emergency Powers Act here in our province. They've had to euphemistically rebrand these things as Emergency Powers Acts, but they all originated as War Powers Acts, because it's only in a time of total war where you would ever want to implement such things. And even then, it is likely government overreach. But this is all, I'll post the video that I did that goes over my province's plan on how they're effectively going to just go and take people's stuff at will if and when they need it when the time comes. And I assure you that no matter where you are in the Western world, there is a similar War Powers Act that exists. Okay, I'll post that. I'll pin that in the comment. You need to go and watch that video because everything I'm saying here is evidential. Price controls or forced rationing that will penalize prepared citizens. Oh, you bought too much. You bought too much food this week, but you didn't buy enough TVs and video games. You did not meet your quota of brainwashing this week, but you exceeded your quota of protein, of animal protein. Confiscation of stored food, fuel, and medical supplies. That's for sure. That's why it's always good to have a big shovel and caches all around. We've done videos on caches on the Canadian Prepper channel. If you didn't know, and it occurred to me yesterday, somebody left a comment. They said, Nate, I don't think you're a real prepper. All you do is talk, talk, talk. And it occurred to me, holy shit, there are people who don't know that this isn't the main channel. There's a Canadian Prepper channel with 1,500 videos that detail my build out of my post-apocalyptic retreat. And this is why this is a note to self, by the way. But yeah, I would consider myself a prepper at this point. After 1,500 dedicated prepping videos, 3,000 videos on that channel total, if not more, 1,500 of which are all practical how to get off the grid. I don't know. I guess sometimes we take for granted that many people aren't familiar with the fact that this channel is a spin-off from another one. The prepping news. Suspension of land ownership rights or zoning changes. Bank freezes on capital controls to prevent withdrawal or transfer of funds. Well, we've seen that during the truckers' protest already. So imagine what they're going to do when it really comes down. Mandatory central bank digital currency rollout with spending restrictions. What you can buy, where you can buy it, when you can buy it. Confiscation of gold, silver, or crypto under wartime emergency orders. There's going to be a lot of gold and silver that was lost in boating accidents, if you know what I mean. Limiting cash use to combat black markets. There's too many people, buying the limited amount of food that remains, so we need to get rid of this cash stuff. It's always good to have a lot of cash on hand for that reason. Mandatory national service or conscription even outside of military roles, and that is essential. They will do forced labor. It will effectively be indenturement, if not outright slavery, when the time comes. That's really what conscription is. It is like the worst form of slavery because you're going to be sent against your will to die to fight a war that you probably don't believe in and is likely motivated by financial means that you don't benefit from. Forced labor assignments to essential industries. Hunger Games shit. That's what we're talking about here. Compulsory vaccinations or medical procedures. We don't even need to. Hey, we're talking to Brett Weinstein next week. That should be interesting. I'm sure we'll have something to say about that. Government control of media and communications infrastructure, of course, weapons confiscation or suspension of firearms rights. As I've always said, they're going to take your guns away from you, and the only time you're going to get them back is when they stick your ass in a trench. Suspension of habeas corpus and detainment without charge, trial by military tribunal or elimination of jury rights, emergency executive powers with no sunset clause, arbitrary terrorism or extremist labels on dissenters. Preppers will most certainly be deemed terrorists, that's for sure. And lastly, the criminalization of preparedness behaviors. Oh, you shouldn't seek to be self-reliant, you terrorist. That guy has an organic carrot. Get him, boys. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about the Nova Scotia wildfire hiking ban. That's how this conversation started. Guys, go watch my video about the Emergency War Powers Act And it should really be eye-opening, because this is a real thing. This is what they plan on doing. The only solution to this is to prep in secret. And I've had this ongoing debate with a friend of mine who does this very thing. It's a high net worth person who keeps all of their prepping entirely secret, like secret. Buys everything, or tries to minimize their digital footprint, doesn't build out infrastructure on the land that they plan on bugging out to, because they don't want to draw attention to it. Because I guess the thinking is that if nobody knows it there when nobody knows it's there when times are good, then they likely aren't going to venture out to seek something out when times are bad, because there's going to be a limited amount of fuel to get to these places. They've timed it so it takes about at least a tank or two of gas to get to this place, so that very few people are going to commit to venturing out this far. There are people, guys, who go to extents to prepare for this eventuality that is far more extensive than what I show you on this channel. What I'm showing you on this channel is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what they're doing, and never mind what the government is doing. That is on a whole other level. Okay, this is child's play, what we're engaged in here on this channel. And I can say that humbly, that the level of prepping that I show you is not even scratching the surface of what some of the real people out there who are, I would call them people of very, who have very strong conviction, who have a lot of resources and a lot of connections. The way that they prep isn't the same as how we prep. Okay, because they're prepping for real. And it's not like we're not prepping for real. It's just we're all doing what we can, right? And eventually we want to evolve into that. But, the people who have access to time and resources are doing things much differently than is shown on YouTube. And that might be worthy of a video unto itself. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.